Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I was suffocating in our bedroom. The window was cracked open, but the air felt dense and stale, as if every ounce of oxygen had been sucked out by the tension between us. I stared at the ceiling, half hoping she would come in with a soft apology. Instead, I got the closest thing to a spit in the face, a casual brush-off. Like I wasn't even worth her remorse. My name is Jake, and up until a month ago, I considered myself a fairly ordinary guy. Steady career in software development, stable salary, a decent home in Seattle. I'd always thought I was doing everything right. Paying the bills on time, remembering birthdays. Well, most of them. Putting away enough for vacations and emergencies. I loved my wife, Sarah, with a devotion that had taken root the first time I saw her. I still remember that day in college, how she laughed at one of my awkward jokes. I thought we were a team, an unbreakable partnership. Maybe that was naive. But you don't realize it's naive until you're choking on the shards of your marriage. The suffocation that night was part physical, part emotional. My body felt as though it were pinned by an invisible weight. She was in the other room. Her phone buzzed, and I heard that hushed tone she used whenever she didn't want me to overhear. I was lying there, staring at the blank white of the ceiling, trying to guess what she would say if I got up and walked in. Maybe some quick, "Don't worry about it. I'm just talking to a friend." But no, she wouldn't even bother with that. Lately, she'd grown bold, or maybe just apathetic. The signal was clear. I didn't matter enough to lie to anymore. I remember thinking, does she expect me to beg for an explanation? I tried to let the question settle in my mind, but it bubbled over with 1,000 others. Who was this person on the other side of that phone call? How often did they speak? Did they laugh about me when I wasn't in the room? The air only grew thicker with each thought, until I forced myself up, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and just breathed. In and out, slow. This was our bedroom, my sanctuary, and I was being driven out of it by a damn phone call. A few days later, I discovered the questionnaire. Sarah had enrolled in this course, Psychology in Relationships, and I was naive enough to think it meant she wanted us to fix what was broken. I used to feel a pang of guilt. Maybe I had let our marriage get stale. Maybe that's why she was signing up. But then I found her workbook. It was left on the dining table, with pages open, notes scribbled in her looping handwriting. There was a question at the top of the page. Why do you cheat? I actually chuckled at first, thinking it was some hypothetical scenario. But there, in her neat green ink, was her answer. So I don't explode. I read that line about 10 times. My eyes traced her carefully formed letters, the tiny flourish she always put under her signature or any important statement. So I don't explode. My wife. The woman I trusted with everything. My heart, my life, my future. She was cheating, and she had boiled it down to this short, matter-of-fact confession. My first instinct was to rush to her and demand to know what she meant. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the workbook, went upstairs, and changed the password to my personal email. I named it No_Trust. When it asked me to confirm, I typed it again, each letter digging into my chest like a spike. I didn't confront her right away. I wasn't sure how. Some men, I guess, would have shouted, thrown things, stormed out into the night. But I've never been big on scenes. I always believe that if you want to see who someone really is, you watch how they act when anger is a choice. So I waited, quietly, for the moment when I could lay everything out. Meanwhile, she carried on, day after day, as if nothing had changed, except for the moments she grew edgy, impatient, tapping her fingernails on the counter, checking her phone whenever she thought I wasn't looking. That was her version of spitting in my face. Acting like I was nobody. I filed for divorce shortly after. I did it quietly. No confrontation in the kitchen, no yelling in the living room. She found out when she was served the papers. She came into the house one evening, eyes wide and confused. I was at the table, finishing up a report for work. She asked me, "Jake, what the hell is this?" And I just looked at her, expressionless. She set the papers down in front of me. "You filed for divorce." Just like that. I nodded. Yes. For a moment, I thought she might break, cry, scream, throw something at me. Instead, her lips trembled, and then she laughed, short and bitter. "Fine. You want to be done. We'll be done." I watched her walk away. I watched her carry herself with that posture of finality, like someone who's already parted ways in her mind. I didn't realize how deep that cut would go. It was like being stabbed by a dull blade, pain that doesn't fully register until later, when your body tries to piece itself together. Soon after, the court mandated couples therapy. The judge decided we needed a chance to talk things through, maybe reconcile, maybe not, but at least try some official route before finalizing everything. She didn't protest. I suppose she wanted to appear cooperative. And I mostly wanted to watch her squirm under professional scrutiny. See if she'd lie in front of a therapist. We attended our first session on a Monday afternoon. The sky was a dull gray, typical for Seattle, but somehow gloomier than usual. I saw Sarah walk in wearing that blue scarf we bought together in an open-air market in the heart of downtown. I remembered how the vendor praised the color for bringing out her green eyes. Sarah had been delighted. She even gave me a quick kiss on the cheek when I bought it for her. Now, seeing that scarf again felt like someone dragging a blade across old scars. I kept my face neutral, though. I wasn't about to show her how much it stung. The therapist, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Seaton, greeted us politely. Her office smelled of lavender. A water feature trickled in the corner, presumably to calm the nerves of angry couples. We sat on a small couch, inches apart yet worlds away. The session began with polite introductions, some background questions. I answered politely, referencing my job and how we met in college. Sarah nodded along, her face drawn, her shoulders stiff. Then Dr. Seaton asked, "Why do you think you're here?" Sarah opened her mouth, hesitated. I decided to take the lead. I said, "Because I have no trust left. I found her confessions in a course workbook. She's cheating. She's admitted it plainly." Sarah's eyes darted to me, a flicker of anger, or maybe panic. I never meant for it to become what it did. The therapist gave an empathetic hum. "So you acknowledge an affair took place?" Sarah nodded, eyes lowered. She squeezed her own hands, knuckles white. I didn't flinch. I wanted her to admit it in front of a stranger, to speak those words. Because maybe once she did, I could let go of the fantasy that she might apologize sincerely. "It started as a friendship," she said. "I needed someone who listened, someone who made me feel alive. And then I stayed silent. Let her talk. Let her fill the room with her justifications. But she didn't. Her words trailed off. I kept my face expressionless, arms folded across my chest. Dr. Seaton guided us gently through the conversation, but my mind was somewhere else, picturing the times Sarah must have sneaked out to see him, imagining how she looked when she was with him. We left that day with a new date for the next session. Sarah lingered near the door. "Jake," she said softly, "can we talk?" "About what?" She exhaled a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. I know I screwed up. It wasn't about you. I just felt like I was suffocating. The day I wrote that. You have no idea how lonely I felt." I studied her face. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed cold. "You felt lonely, so you cheated." Her eyes tightened. "It's not that simple. You don't even ask me how I'm doing anymore. You don't." I cut her off. "Thanks for clarifying." Then I walked out, leaving her standing alone in that little hallway. Part of me, the part that had once loved her beyond reason, wanted to put my arms around her and say, "We'll fix this." But that part was smothered by months of silent betrayal. I felt an odd satisfaction in seeing the flicker of regret in her eyes. A week later, I found an email. She'd left her laptop open. She must have grown careless. Or maybe she wanted me to see it, The sender was named Marcus. The subject line read, "About last night." My stomach clenched as I opened it. The words jumped out at me like flaming arrows. Desire. Missing you. Can't wait. Next time. Your hair. Your body. It was all there, in black and white, with an unmistakable erotic edge. My throat felt tight, but I forced myself to read to the end. He wrote about how he loved her laugh, how he felt energy surge between them. At the bottom, a flippant sign-off. Yours, if you want me. I stood there, the weight of it crushing. This wasn't a half-baked emotional fling. This was a full-blown affair, complete with shared fantasies and secret nights. The email was detailed enough to confirm exactly what had been happening. Where, how, and how often. My heart hammered against my ribs, and for a moment, I had to fight the urge to vomit. But I swallowed back the bile, closed the laptop, and sat on the couch. In that instant, everything felt surreal. The memory of her handwriting, "So I don't explode," echoed in my head. She was letting out her frustrations in the arms of another man. I got up and paced the living room, trying to process what I'd just read. The walls seemed too narrow, the ceiling pressing down. Rage pulsed in my veins, but I kept it on a low simmer. I thought of calling her right then, demanding an explanation. Yet I resisted. I knew we had therapy in a few days. I could confront her there. Make her speak the truth in front of someone else. Force her to peel back every excuse until only the raw betrayal remained. The next therapy session came. She arrived a few minutes after me. I noticed she wore the same scarf again, and the memory twisted the knife deeper. Dr. Seaton welcomed us and asked how the week had been. I forced a short laugh. I found an email from Marcus, her friend. I said it slowly, enunciating each syllable. Sarah's face paled. Dr. Seaton glanced at her. "Do you want to respond?" Sarah looked at me, then away. "Yes. I've been seeing him. I'm sorry." She inhaled sharply. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jake." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "But you did." She blinked rapidly. "I know." That was her entire defense. "I know." No attempts to justify or mitigate. Maybe she realized how hollow it would sound. The therapist tried to steer us toward deeper communication, but I'd had enough. I let Sarah squirm. Dr. Seaton asked questions about what we each wanted from the marriage. Sarah stumbled through half apologies and half defenses. I needed to feel special. I was losing myself. He understood me. All these phrases that left a rancid taste in my mouth. Then the session ended, and we left in separate cars. I was determined to keep my composure, but inside, every memory I had of Sarah was rotting, unraveling. I remembered the time we drove down the coast, and she rested her head on my shoulder at a scenic overlook. Or the time she made me dinner on my birthday, and sang this silly tune just to see me laugh. All those little moments felt corrupted now. Even so, I realized I wasn't ready to let go of them entirely. They were part of me. Another week crawled by. My work started to suffer because I couldn't focus. I stared at lines of code and saw only the shape of her body in his arms. I snapped at a coworker who asked me something trivial. My boss pulled me aside, asking if I needed time off. "I'm fine," I lied. Meanwhile, Sarah had packed some of her clothes and moved them into the spare bedroom. She still lived in the house with me, but we spoke only when absolutely necessary. Eventually, the day of the final therapy session arrived. The judge had mandated 4 sessions, and this was the last. Sarah sat down, crossing her legs. She wore a faint, neutral expression. I forced a calm breath. The tension between us was thick, but I also felt a kind of numbness, as if my nerves had finally burned out. Dr. Seaton cleared her throat. "Well, we've spent the last sessions exploring the reasons behind the affair and the impact it's had on both of you. Jake, Sarah, how do you each see this moving forward?" Sarah stared at the floor for a moment. I honestly don't know. I'm sorry I hurt you." She glanced at me. But I can't pretend I wasn't suffocating. I can't pretend it was a one-time mistake. It was more than that. My chest tightened. I realized she was confessing that it wasn't just a fling. She actually had feelings for this man, or she was at least aware that her betrayal was deeper than a passing impulse. Part of me wanted to stand up and shout, but I kept my mouth shut, letting the cold anger swirl beneath the surface. Then Dr. Seaton turned to me. "Jake, what do you want?" I took a slow breath. "I want to live." My voice was steady. Without guilt, without trying so hard to earn someone's love that I forget who I am. I paused, feeling the slightest tremor in my fingers. "I'm done. I'm not interested in chasing a ghost." I saw Sarah's posture shift. She'd been waiting, expecting me to say, "I want to try again with you." But it never came. Her eyes flickered with surprise. That was the moment I felt a sharp pang of regret. If she had apologized months ago, if she'd come clean before I found the workbook, the email, maybe we could have fixed it. But that version of us no longer existed. That person I was, the trusting, naive husband, died the moment I read her words. So I don't explode. I left the session first, ignoring Sarah's quiet plea. "Jake, can we just talk for a minute?" My footsteps echoed in the hallway, and each step felt like an anvil crashing down. Outside, the sky was its usual gray, but I inhaled the air like it was fresh oxygen after months underwater. I felt raw, but alive. That evening, I drove through our old neighborhood aimlessly. I passed the park where we once picnicked, the cafe where she teased me for ordering the same cappuccino every time. My chest constricted at the memories. But I didn't stop. I kept going until the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. Then I returned home. She was sitting on the couch, that scarf folded neatly in her lap. I stood in the doorway, not speaking. Eventually, she looked up. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "I'll find a temporary place until the divorce is finalized." I didn't respond. I watched her gather her things, watched how she clutched her phone in her hand. No doubt he was waiting for her, ready to wrap her in new arms, ready to do all the things I had once done with genuine love. But I refused to let my mind wander there. I escorted her to the door in silence. She turned as if to say something else, but the words died on her lips. I closed the door. The lock clicked with a finality that reverberated in my bones. What followed was a strange period of emptiness. Part of me wanted revenge, something bigger than just changing my email password to no_trust, bigger than a quiet divorce. But another part of me felt exhausted. She'd taken so much already. My faith, my comfort, my sense of worth. And I hated that I had let her. My phone buzzed a few times over the next week. Messages from Sarah, a couple from unknown numbers that might have been Marcus, for all I knew. I deleted them without reading. I focused on my job, burying myself in code, sometimes staying up until 3 a.m. My boss, seeing the shift in my output, tried to pull me aside again. This time, I told him the truth. "I'm divorcing. It's messy." He nodded in that sympathetic way people do when they don't know what else to say. But ironically, my performance soared. Maybe because the only place I could maintain a sense of control was at work. There, logic reigned, a puzzle had solutions, and bits of data didn't lie. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from Dr. Seaton. "Jake, the court wants a follow-up assessment. I'd like to schedule another session with you and Sarah." I almost refused, but something in me wanted to face Sarah one last time, on my terms. I wanted her to see that I was no longer the man she could toy with, that the destruction she caused had forged something colder, sharper inside me. We met in Dr. Seaton's office one final time. Sarah arrived first, apparently. I came in to find her sitting in the same spot on that small couch, twisting her fingers around the ends of her scarf. I didn't speak. I sat at the far edge of the couch, leaving a wide gap between us. Dr. Seaton greeted me with a polite smile, then asked us to summarize how things were going. Sarah spoke first. "I've moved out. Jake and I. We hardly speak. I've been trying to send him messages, but he won't answer. I'm not sure if that's healthy. I forced a laugh. Healthy or not, it's how I choose to handle things right now. Dr. Seaton leaned forward. Jake, would you say you feel closure? I mulled that word over. Closure. I feel strong. Stronger than before. Sarah swallowed. I never wanted you to be like this. Like what? I asked calmly. She hesitated. So cold. You used to have so much warmth. I studied her eyes, remembering the first time they ever lit up when she laughed at my jokes. Remembering how she'd once teased me for being too gentle, too naive. Maybe, I said at last, you prefer me the other way because it served you better. Her cheeks flushed. For a second, I saw what might have been genuine guilt. Jake, I'm truly sorry. She probably was, in a way. But that sorry came too late for me. Dr. Seaton nodded, taking a few notes. Then she asked something that I didn't expect. Before we wrap up, is there anything either of you wants to say that maybe you've been holding back? I waited. Sarah sighed. I just hope someday we can talk again, like human beings, without all this hate. I breathed in. Hate. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you. There's a difference. She blinked rapidly, tears forming in her eyes. I realized that might be the first time I'd seen her on the brink of crying since this all began. But it didn't soften me. Not anymore. Dr. Seaton concluded the session with some standard remarks about letting the healing process happen. I walked out feeling as though I'd finally shut a door in my mind. The judge signed off on our divorce within weeks. It was surprisingly smooth. No children to fight over, no major assets besides the house, which I ended up refinancing to buy out her share. She didn't contest it. I suppose she was too busy planning her new life with Marcus. I lost track of her for a while, which was both liberating and haunting. I wondered where she was, whether she was still with him. I still had flashes of that email in my mind, the words, "I can't wait until next time." But each time the memory returned, I forced it aside, focusing on the fact that I was free of the constant lies. Then, one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Jake, it's Marcus. Don't worry. This isn't a trap or anything. I just want to talk. My jaw tightened. I hadn't expected him to contact me. Against my better judgment, I wrote back, "What do you want?" He replied almost instantly, "Meet me at Greenbridge Coffee at 6 p.m. tomorrow. No drama. Please." I knew it was probably a bad idea, but some part of me craved the confrontation. To look the man who crawled into my marriage in the face. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early. It was a small place with local art on the walls. I sat at a corner table, scanning the entrance every time someone walked in. My heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through me. He came in wearing a black leather jacket, hair pulled back in a small ponytail. He was tall, carried himself with an air of casual confidence. Spotting me, he took a breath and walked over. He offered a small nod before sliding into the seat opposite me. I didn't offer my hand. He started, "Jake, thanks for meeting me." I stared, silent. He cleared his throat, fiddled with the coffee cup. "Look, I know I'm the last person you want to see or hear from, but I needed to say, I'm sorry." I almost laughed. "You're sorry? For what exactly?" He exhaled. "For what happened between Sarah and me. I didn't plan on breaking up a marriage." "Then what did you plan on?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "I was lonely. She was lonely. One thing led to another. I know that sounds like a cliché, but it just happened." I felt a bitter grin tug at my mouth. "It doesn't just happen. People make decisions." He nodded, looking genuinely pained. "Yes, we did. And it was selfish. I wanted you to know that I never set out to humiliate you, or, to hurt you. I'm not asking you to forgive me, but I need you to know that." I studied him. He wasn't quite what I expected. He seemed smaller in person somehow, less bold than the man who wrote those erotic emails. Maybe that's always the case. The fantasy is bigger than real life. Or maybe I was just seeing him as a flawed human being, not a monster. I didn't know what to do with that. I said, "What do you want from me?" "Absolution." He shook his head. "No. I just thought, maybe if you heard it from me, it'd help you move on." I felt a surge of anger, but it was surprisingly dull, like a wound that's mostly scar tissue. "Move on," I repeated. "Right." He pursed his lips. "I don't know what else to say. I'm not trying to reopen old wounds. I guess I just—" "You want me to feel sorry for you," I interrupted. He looked down. "No, that's not it." We sat there in silence for a moment. The hum of the espresso machine filled the shop, and people chatted around us. We were in our own bubble of tension. Finally, I leaned in. "I want you to understand something. You didn't just sleep with a random woman. You helped tear apart a marriage. You took someone's trust, you and Sarah both, and you shattered it. Do you get that?" He nodded slowly. "I do." "Then there's nothing else for us to talk about," I said, standing up. He didn't try to stop me. I walked out, my heart pounding, but strangely calm. It felt like a final exclamation point on the whole ordeal. In the weeks that followed, the divorce was finalized without much fanfare. I paid the settlement, got my house back in my name. I tossed most of the reminders of her, old photos, birthday cards, souvenirs, not in a dramatic bonfire, just one by one into the trash. Some nights, I'd catch myself remembering her laugh, remembering how we once planned to grow old together. Then I'd exhale and remind myself, she's gone. Strangely, as the months passed, I started feeling a new sense of solidity. The man who once dreaded confrontation, who tiptoed around conflict, was gone. I'd been stripped to the core, forced to see how strong I could be without the illusions. My focus shifted back to my life, my health, my career, the simple pleasures I used to enjoy, like reading a good sci-fi novel or taking a walk by the Puget Sound. I realized that the betrayal had broken me in some ways, but it had also let me rebuild with a sharper edge. Occasionally, Sarah would text me something about a piece of mail that got delivered to her by mistake. I kept my replies curt and polite. She tried once or twice to ask if I'd ever be open to friendship. I never responded to that. She'd made her choice. So had I. One evening, nearly a year after everything unraveled, I walked down by the water. The sky was a breathtaking mix of pink and gold as the sun sank behind the horizon. I thought back on everything. My initial shock when I found her workbook, my quiet devastation as I read that email, my slow-burning anger in therapy sessions, and the final acceptance that came when I watched her leave the house. There was no moment of triumph in any of that, only a hard, necessary journey. But as I stood there, the breeze off the water cooling my skin, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I was alive, standing on my own 2 feet. My chest no longer ached with unrelenting pain. It had dulled to a faint bruise that only flared when I deliberately poked at old memories. In a strange way, I felt grateful for my new clarity. The illusions were gone. I knew who I was now, someone who could survive betrayal, heartbreak, and the raw emptiness that follows. And from that survival, I felt a surge of pride, a conviction that I had endured and come out stronger. I closed my eyes, hearing the seagulls in the distance. I whispered to no one in particular, "I don't need your forgiveness, Sarah. I've got my own now." There in the hush of dusk, I felt the final shred of anger unravel into the wind, and I let it go.